So here we are once again getting to meet in community for those of us who are alive, which is so much fun. And we're here for the Story Alchemist podcast. And I get to be here with the one and only Johnny Maples. I was telling him just a couple moments ago that my dear friend Fabio, who lives in Portland, sent me a message today, and he's like, "Oh, you've got Johnny and live, and he's a legend where we are." And he was so sad he couldn't be joining us today. So I'm sure he gets to hear the recording that, here in spirit. And I'm going to read a little bit of Johnny's bio. And I was thinking, Johnny, I'm not going to be able to pronounce half the words that you have in your bio because they're not of my language, and I don't want to harm them because I respect beautiful words. And so I'm going to speak the words that I can, and then I'm going to ask if you could actually give us the correct pronunciations of the things that you want to have spoken. Does that sound like a deal?
It's okay. Okay. I don't care.
Okay.
He's used to it.
I love everybody's pronunciations.
What's so funny is that half the people I know call me Leah, and half the other people I know call me Leah. And I'm just like, you know what? Like I know what you're trying to say. Um, and but there's also something to be said for the rhythm and the resonance of language and really learning the sound of a language. And so I'm really excited to be with you today to learn more about you and your traditions and your commitment to your traditions. So here I'm going to say, so Johnny Moses is a Native American raised in remote, and I'm not going to say it because I don't know how to say it, but he's right now he lives on the words that I know how to say in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. He was raised in traditional ways by his grandparents and sent by his elders to share their teachings with all people. I'm having grandparent envy right now. Johnny is a master storyteller, an oral historian, a traditional healer, and respected spiritual leader. Johnny, whose traditional name, you're going to have to speak it to us in your own voice. You want to say that for us?
Traditional.
Oh, Whis.stem.men.knee.
Ah,
First
which
one.
The latest one.
My oldest one.
Walking Medicine Robe also carries sacred breath, sacred life, medicine teachings, and healing ceremonies of his Northwest Coast people. Fluent in 8 native languages, he is traveling ambassador.
9.
Update your bio. He is traveling ambassador for the Northwest Coast culture. All continue to add languages to our repertoire. He shares the knowledge and richness of his spiritual and cultural traditions with people across the United States and Canada through storytelling, lectures, and workshops. Johnny's been a featured storyteller at hundreds of venues, including National Storytelling Festival. There's so many, I'm not going to read them because we just want to get to talk to you, Johnny. But the accolades are rich and many. And welcome, 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 welcome.
Hi, Chika. Thank you.
So, how do we start? Can you start with, your favorite way of, like, maybe we start with your relationship with your grandparents, because you said that was such a big part of your learning how to be, and maybe some of the favorite stories that you learned as a child that affected how you see the world.
I was raised by they were my great grandparents actually, but I always knew them as mom and pop. And I thought if you didn't have a mom and pop that was wrinkled, that's not your parent. But they told me so many stories, and I can't pick one story that's better than the other because they were all told with love and protection and how to survive in where I grew up. It was the forest land, which is a different protection from and being able to what is sacred, where there's bears, where there's snakes, whatever. That people would, the old people would always say, respect them. They have their own territory, and so as young children, that's one of the things I just always loved about wow, the boundary levels. Just like when children, when they become teenagers, there's a boundary level with their parents. And it's a different kind of thing in nature. It's a natural thing for people to learn boundary levels, but in a natural way. I think that was so beautiful growing up.
Just thinking about that, right? This idea of learning boundaries and how these stories can teach us how to be humans, and like in this time when
Mm-hmm.
our whole world is fighting about boundaries right now. And and how do these stories teach us how to be human in the world and guide us? I'm really touched by you saying that that the stories that they told you protected you.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
And then also connected us. Stories can connect you with people you don't know
Mm.
or the unknown. And in native stories, well, in my culture, when you translate it, we don't say native stories or indigenous, it's human
Mhm.
stories, human being. It's all about being a human being. And I think the wonderful thing of the stories about the bears, the ants, different animals, how they survived each other and they knew their boundaries, but they also helped everybody. And I think that's such a wonderful thing is to learn about the people who have those boundaries, how their boundaries can help your people. And you don't have to agree with it, you don't have to deal with it, but that's just what you are educated, you know about it, you know whether to go forward or backwards. I always thought that was such a wonderful, for me as a child, I thought, what a wonderful way to learn from the animals, not the animals, but just the plants, the trees, because we thought of them as all living people. You know, I love the tree people. They're always standing tall and they never go away.
Yeah, they can withstand strong winds, right?
That's true, yes.
I always think about the sequoias. I got to stand with the sequoias. They're like aliens on this planet. They're these
Mhm.
big creatures that are unlike anything else, and their roots don't go down. They don't have deep taproots. They all go wide. And it taught me this metaphor of, right, like when we're learning together, we want to rise together, because if you get that tall, if you get that big, there better be other people beside you that you can lean on.
See,
Or you're
they were the ancient internet system,
like,
including everybody with their roots.
right, they knew, right. Oh gosh. What a lesson in terms of some trees put their roots all the way down, have to tap the source, and then others, right, they just intermingle and how much taller they get. So much to learn from that. Can you talk to us, when we talked about, I was talking to Kathy, who we can see her shoulder, your sister on the side. So thank you, Kathy, for being part of the story. And we were like, what should we talk about? And we came up with this title, Native American storytelling, the stories, the teachings in the story.
Yes. Mhm.
I'm curious, I don't know if you can even talk about it because it's like drinking the water, describing the water that you drink, but what do you feel like are some of the things that you've noticed that are really different about Native American storytelling versus like Western storytelling or storytelling from other places?
I think native storytelling, well, the way I shared, it's survival, and I always share the beauty of storytelling, the fine arts that a lot of people don't see in just daily living. There's so much beauty in our life as growing up as a child from our grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends and relatives, and the stories that help us to become who we are today. We are all built from a story. If it wasn't for those people, we would, I mean, and we still, even to the end of our life, they tell the story at our funeral, which is very sad, unfortunately. It should be told all our life while we're living. And so that's why when we have the living storytelling of the animals, the plants, the rocks and mountains and rivers, it's alive. We are alive. We're a living people. And and that goes for all of us, you know. So that's what I've always believed in the storytelling. That's one the ancient it's an ancient gift that was placed upon our people. Not just but everybody. All of you are storytellers, and you have a story to tell. And if you don't tell your story, and I hate to say it in this way, you know, people die or people suffer. And so we must not let our stories die. Everybody's story is so important.
You know, some of the things that came up while you just said that was that, you know, in these traditional stories that you grew up in, the characters, the people, the beings that were in the story were the trees, were the rivers, were the animals, and that through hearing these stories, these beings were a part of your life. And one of the things that I'm recognizing in so many of the stories that I walk around with in my day-to-day life, living in, you know, California or Hawaii, not many of the stories that I get to tell involve a tree as a character, or rocks as a character, or a bear as a character. And what I'm hearing in this is that without those beings in my daily stories, those beings aren't in my life as well. And what is it to consciously, you know, what is it to carry these stories forward and make sure that they get to keep living in these lives, these beings and their wisdom and their insight also get to keep living in our lives. And I've seen people die when they, oh, go on. Yes, what were you going to say?
Were you gonna say something?
Oh, oh, we wanted to sing a song in this our language. The word in the storytelling world, Se'il means singing or crying, which is the seed of storytelling. In our culture, we believe when you cry, when you sing, a new story is going to begin. So we'll sing a song for you. Me and my sister here. I'm going to get her on the picture.
Whether I like it or not. No.
I just want to
Oh.
make sure that your sound is on so that we can hear your drum. Did you guys do that for Zoom?
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Good. Okay, great.
Slightly like the, I know that. Like,
Okay.
oh, yeah, hey, hey,
Hey, hey, hey, hey. Oh, 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 oh. Hey, 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 hey.
and we always say in our language, the men say oh, and the ladies say. No, we have been blessed with it. That's a storytelling blessing song. The cries from all the storytellers that lived before us.
Can you tell people more about that? I feel like sometimes we get to see people do a blessing or an invocation or a calling, and and it's. Can you share more about what you're doing when you're starting by doing that?
Well, the first thing I always, in my mind, we call a hutch, this wonderful universe that can live in your head that you call your mind. I always thank my mothers, my grandmothers. That's the first thing as storytellers in the native culture. We always thank our Mother Earth, but also our mothers who suffered
Mm.
to bring us into this world. And that's one of the first stories that we always encourage the young people to learn to respect. You know, you don't always like your mom all the time, like I didn't either. But you learn how to, they went through a lot of suffering to bring you into this world. And so I always think about that with the elderly people would tell us respect your loved ones and sing the songs that you felt, the cry when you sing, like when you first come into this world, you cry as a baby. That's your first story that you're sharing as your baby cry. It's a very first everybody, and everybody does not have the same story, but we all have the same baby cry.
So true. So true. We all come in the same way. You were saying how passionate you are about telling stories to children. And
Yes.
could you tell us more about that?
Well, you know, growing up, then we had we lived in a village that we had no much electricity, but we did have a radio, a transistor radio, but mostly was storytelling. And the elders would tell us stories. And it's always stories they would tell us about the creatures or the animals or things. And then it wasn't about how much that we were afraid of them, but there were always stories about how much they protected us and how much they loved us. And it was such a different experience of listening to stories when I went to boarding school, where nature was supposed to be the enemy and be afraid, you know. But I was raised with, oh, no, they love you, they protect you. And I think that was, it made a difference in my life as a child of knowing that nature, I had brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas that were my part of my nature. Grandma Ocean would never let me drown because she protected me. Because we used to check nets in the ocean every morning, 4 in the morning, early in the morning, and the Nuu-chah-nulth people. That was my job, was to check the nets, and it was food for the whole village. But I always hear Grandmother Ocean and in the stories, just we love you. We're not going to swallow you. You're 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 not that good enough.
Well,
I guess it didn't taste very good for Grandmother Ocean.
good. I mean, it's really making me think of the different kinds of stories that help us orient ourselves to the world and see ourselves in the world, and to hear
Yes,
raised with Grandmother Ocean, and Auntie Tree, and
we're
these
all related. Yeah. we're all connected.
And how do we as storytellers now, and we're like in the Western narrative around climate, and how now nature is the enemy, and so many people are being raised in that story. And then how do we as storytellers be so aware of our power to protect others through the stories that we tell them? That's one of the pieces that I'm really receiving from you, and almost really making sure that we play a part in telling the whole story, the truth of the big story that we're living in.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The truth is the most important. And the root of storytelling is life. It's a life force.
Mm.
And we need to always share the truth that we feel. I think it will keep us connected, because that's all we have now. Nobody believes. They always want to believe in the fantasy or things that are man-made. But those of us who are storytellers, who are learn these stories from our elders, our aunties, uncles, friends, relatives. It's from somebody you loved that is going to live longer than these
Mm. Mm.
problems that we are going through today.
Right.
That's what I believe.
It's such a good reminder. I mean, the end of the world has been, every ancient society has dealt with, the end of the world story. This is not a new story, right? It's actually quite familiar. And we have living proof that, life continues, and humans
And it's
continue to,
been documented,
right.
even in stone, by Moses and another before Moses. They all recorded the stories in stone, and in our medicine stories, the rock is the oldest storyteller.
Oh,
The rock. And no, it doesn't matter what happens to the rock. It's still there.
can you tell us what, I hear the word medicine story, and it means such different things to different people. What does it mean to you when you say that?
When I say the medicine, to me, it's love. The love of life.
Mm.
That's the meaning to me, is in storytelling. The love or love of listening to other people telling their stories, living, I guess would be an action word. In our native language, our language is a little bit different. It's living is always before life, which I think is really funny because in English language it's completely different. Living life, but no, in native languages, uh, no, you're living before you live, before you are alive.
Oh,
But I
is
really believe that the power of storytelling. I know from my grandparents, every time we go to sleep, they would tell us, my grandma or my grandpa, they would tell me just before I go to sleep. I don't know if they had a plan or not, but they'd always say, I tell you these stories because I love
Mm.
you. I love you.
Mm.
And that teaching, that was the most sacred teaching I heard, as they why I continued to tell stories, because I knew my grandma and grandpa loved me.
Mm. You know, you're saying something that I've heard others speak about around when, and I've experienced myself, when someone takes a moment just to pause and say, I love you. Like, I'm giving this to you. This is something that you can carry with you. And then it means something and it has value. And I think about, you know, just getting to be in you and your laughter and your lightheartedness and the clear love that you have of sharing this. And how many people don't get to hear those words, that they're not shared with them, you know, and yet what a gift it is, even if you didn't receive that yourself, that we can take a stand as being in the storied way, and we can understand the power of our voice and the gift of our stories. I think especially the hard ones, you know, it's like in such
Yeah.
challenge times, you know, it's like I think people will often hide out and pretend like bad things aren't happening, or you know, don't want to repeat a bad story. And I feel like being able to learn the bigger story and your own story and then be able to share that is like one of the greatest gifts out there.
How true. We need to remember that there's so many people that love you. Like there's so many people that they might be just listening to randomly, or they don't know what they're listening to. But when they are touched by a story, I mean, you touch somebody, you touch their soul, the soul, their mind, especially storytellers that are very intellectual. Some of them, not all of them, but anyway, the mind, body, and spirit is touched by storytelling. That's one gift that the storytelling does, is it covers the mind, body, and spirit, and the soul of it, and that is just so uh, sacred. I mean, to the native people, it was. That's why the elders, when we would have to, when different elders would come and tell us stories, even though my grandparents were really, really super old, there were younger storytellers that come in to tell us stories, and they said, "Shut up now! These storytellers are going to come," and we'd think, well, they're a lot younger than you are, like they're in their 70s and 80s. We thought they're not really old storytellers. They're not as old as you are. Like, because my grandmother was over 113 and my grandpa 108. We never thought of them as, how could anybody be more a better storyteller? But we learned our lesson. There were a lot of really good, wonderful storytellers that are younger. So that's what encouraged me as a young person to learn from younger 70-year-olds. Yes, you can be a young storyteller in your 70s.
What was one of the first stories that came to you to share with others?
Is it okay? I can tell a story? Like,
Oh, please.
okay. This is one of my favorite stories that saved my life. Because, I'm a survivor of the government boarding school in Canada, the residential school. But this is where I became sick, and they sent me home to die, and I had cancer, probably from all that crappy boarding school food they had. But anyway, but this story is my favorite. It's the grandmother cedar tree. I'd like to share. If you're listening to the story, you may say Eklel. Can you say Eklel? Eklel. Okay. That means we are listening.
Hey, Cloud.
Eklel. Every time I stop talking, you say Eklel.
Okay,
Long ago, there lived grandmother cedar tree. She was very old.
Cloud.
But the Great Spirit could feel her sorrow, sadness, sorrow, and loneliness, and sent the birds. In our culture, the birds are like angels. And they came and they brought this beautiful seed and they planted it right next to grandmother cedar tree. And it was a little baby cedar tree, and she was so happy. Oh, she had someone to raise. Eklel,
Ik-
Emanat Tanashit. As the tree began to grow, the animals, the Smyth, love to chew on the tree. But grandmother move her arms back and forth. Are you moving your arms back and forth? Move your arms back and forth. You scare them away. And they went away. And the little cedar tree, her grandson, Si.Si.Wiss, he grew some more. Are you growing? Gotta grow. Keep growing. And sometimes the north wind would come. The north wind was strong and could bend the tree and break. But grandmother cedar tree would put her arms around her grand. Are you putting your arms around someone you love? And they would grow some more. They would be protected. Oh my goodness. I would not touch it. Sometimes even the heat and sunlight was unbearable. It caused your skin to burn. But Grandma Sitla would put her arms over her grandson's head and give him shade. Shade also means loving kindness. Loving kindness. Shade is loving kindness. He'd feel so good. He grows some more. We're going some more. And then, but sometimes now the cedar tree, he became even taller than Grandma Sitla, because this times the old growth trees, you know. He was so tall. Huge, and he was so grateful and thankful to Grandma raising him. But he started growing a different way. He started growing this way. Old growth. Gaining weight. That's why we have the old growth trees. But Grandma loved her grandson so much. But sometimes she was sad and lonely. Sad and lonely. And she said, my grandson is probably sorry that he had to spend time with me, which was not true. He loved his grandma, his Sila. Oh, I might as well. It's time for me to leave this world. I don't want to live no more. And then grandson spoke up and said to his grandma, he never ever talked back to grandma. But this was the first time this grandma, Sitla, when the animals came to bother me, the Smyth, the deer that like to chew in my branches, did you not move your arms back and forth? You're moving your arms back and forth? Scare them away. And then she felt so good. She thought, I want to live some more. Then grandson Si.Si.Wiss said, see, Grandma, did you not feel when the heaviness and everything. And you protected me. You put your arms over me and gave me shade from the hot sun. You putting shade over, and that's the cool, loving. You love somebody, you put your arms over them. Grandma, I'll do that for you. And she felt so good, and she wanted to live some more. It just continued on till the time his grandmother, Sitla, remember you taught me how to sing songs when I felt bad, or when you felt that that the animals were not going to help, and they came and they helped you. They landed on your strong arms. These the birds. That's birds. They landing and they sang beautiful songs, and they carried my loneliness and sorrow away. Grandmother, you took care of me. Now I will take care of you. That story. So stories can save people's lives. Thank God for mommies and grandmas. That's why we're a matriarchal society.
That piece of being able to provide shade for others and to receive shade from others.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah. Nisa saying it's a love story. Aaron saying, thank you. Thank you, grandmother, and the cedar trees. Yeah. It's making me think of what's happening in the world when we remove our trees and that shade for humanity, the loving.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
And bless all those people who are planting the trees and taking care of them.
And my grandmother used to always say that when you look at the trees, every branch, you don't know who you're related to, so be careful. There's always a branch of relative. Those trees got around. They might be standing around, but the seeds travel all over. That's what my grandma used to say. I didn't know what she was talking about. I says, what?
Well, I'm going to ask one more question. Also, I'm just going to put out there that if there's anyone in our live audience right now in community that wants to put in a question or a chat, this is a good time. But, Johnny, you've been speaking about something about how we're all related in all relations. And that's definitely a worldview that's been lost by many. And I don't know if it's easy to explain, but can you just share a little bit more if someone is hearing that idea for the very first time? All my relations and that we're all related. What is that? Can you share more about that? Or did the story just do it for us?
Well, to me, when I share the stories, it never says that black, red, white, and yellow, or whatever color, white. It's always human being. So I always think of it, the human beings. We're all human beings, and we have forgotten to think of ourselves as human beings because of color. And to come out of the colors are very sacred and important, but your life can change if you just concentrate on one color. That's what my grandpa and grandma used to always say. Remember, we are all the colors, and colors are so important.
Mm.
If you don't have any color in your life, you won't be a human being. And so I think the storytelling of when we tell stories, it brings color in our life. So the color, the picture of color, red, yellow, black, and white, we are precious in His sight. But I had an auntie, she used to say, that's God's favorite colors, red and yellow, black and white. And she used to always say that. God loves all the colors, and colors we don't even know. Mine is purple, I love. But anyway, I'm just so grateful for this way of educating all you sisters here, doing this. This is so wonderful. We needed, it would have been nice to have this. Now, at least it started now. We need to continue it for the young people so they can live. We don't want our young people to feel alone and feel that they're unwanted because of their color or whatever gender. I'm so grateful, Aichka.
Gosh, Johnny, I think that, we have about 10 minutes left, and it's such a treat to get to hear your stories. And I'm curious if there's any other story that wants to come alive in our presence, if there's a favorite story that, especially I hear your love for children, and is there one that you love telling more than another, or I know they all come alive in different ways, but
Oh, that's the problem of being a story. There's so many, it's so hard to pick, but I just
yeah.
always ask the spirit, it's just, what story's gonna, and me first, me first.
Yeah.
So I was ask the children's storytelling spirits. But I would love to tell this one. It's it's a Auntie Vi Hilbert. She used to love to tell the story
Can
of,
I ask for one question? If you can, it's a little bit hard to hear you, unfortunately. And so the closer you can get, the better we can hear you.
okay, all right, okay, my cat.
I think you just have to talk a little bit louder.
Okay,
Pretty close.
is it? Okay,
Great.
can you hear me now?
Can you hear him better?
She,
Yes.
my
Okay.
sister's the technician, so.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Talk louder.
Okay. Well, this is the story of Lady Louse. This is the old version, but I'm going to tell you the children one which is my favorite. The story goes this way, and if you're listening, say Habu. Habu.
Habu.
Al tudi to have to teach question. Long ago, there lived Lady Louse, or Lice. Those of you who don't know who Lady Louse is, that creepy crawly thing in your Louse. Oh, she lived all by herself in a real big house. Habu.
Habu.
Altahik. And she lived in her house all by herself. One day she took her broom, and she swept it. When she got to the middle of her house, she got lost. Her house was full of dirt, and that is all. Well, here is the another story that was I heard from a young little girl. She must have been about 12 years old in Vancouver, British Columbia, and this is her version, and I'll tell it in Halkamalam language, their language. You could just say Ines, Ines. We're
Venus.
in this story, Lady Louse was a sponge.
Venus.
Ines Nisusquanetic. One day, Lady Louse, the sponge, she decided to jump in the river.
Venus.
Nisusquit. When she jumped in the river,
Venus.
she became self-absorbed.
Venus.
And that was the end of poor Lady Louse.
Isn't that a teaching?
I encourage you, all of you, dear beloved ones, create your own Lady Louse or Mr. Louse story you might have. That's one way of getting rid of, in our culture, killing people. Telling jokes about them.
You mean like killing their ego or like, getting rid of the bad parts? Like,
We'll leave that to the storytelling career.
To your imagination.
Your storytelling imagination. Storytelling is very powerful.
it's a funny thing to try to talk about storytelling when storytelling isn't, it's like they're not really meant to be caught and defined, right? They're these living creatures and they'll all speak to us in different ways.
Mhm.
And I love this invitation. And maybe, for anyone else that's here too, that, it's like if you, that's such a great invitation, when you see something that is less than beneficial to all life thriving, like this quality being self-absorbed, and it's like, how can we make light of it? How can we like bring it to the surface? How can we shed light on it? And how can we, through story and togetherness and be like, oh, right, that's not something that's so, it can drown you. What a great invitation.
Isn't
Thank
that wonderful?
you. It really is. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a great, you're inspiring me. We're going to definitely have a prompt coming from that. You know,
A storytelling revolution.
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And we're in one, you know, um, Johnny, I want to say a couple of things. If there are ways, are there ways that you're going to be a teacher in the Alchemy of Story program, which I'm so excited. You'll be coming in for a 2-hour class and there'll be we're going to be able to dive in even deeper and you're going to hear more stories and also have opportunities for ways to create your own stories in relationship to what you're learning. And, one of the things that really touched me right at the beginning is you said, if we don't tell our stories, we can die.
That's true. Mhm.
And
Living.
and we see people that aren't fully alive in their lives, like their bodies are moving, but their hearts aren't vibrant, their ideas aren't vibrant, and they're not daring and courageous. And stories, it's like I feel like it goes deeper and deeper into my cellular understanding every time I hear it. This idea that stories protect us, they can heal us, they're gifts, and it's the way that life can be lived through us. And the more that we understand how meaningful and how important it is that we learn not only how to tell our personal stories, but also just this, Johnny, I never had seen it in this simple way of when we don't have stories that hold all of our relations in them, then we don't get the chance to be in relationship to all of our relations. And as storytellers, those of you who are standing here at this particular threshold, really wanting to keep storytelling alive as a sacred art, you're the ones that are responsible for this. You're the ones who are carrying this thread that's getting thinner and thinner, and it doesn't have to, it can get stronger and stronger. And Johnny, I just so cherish your light spirit and your beautiful way and your laughter. And so I want to tell more people about the program, but I also, how can people directly support you? Are there ways that they can invite you to be part of what they're doing? Bring you, like, yeah, how can people get to be more involved with you? Maybe Kathy's going to help tell us about that.
Well, just wanted to mention that Johnny has a website,
Yep.
and it's just johnnymoses.com. And so if you're interested in hiring him to do storytelling at an event, or to want to buy some of his CDs or DVDs, or just look at the site, that would be great. That support. And I'm the one that deals with all of his emails because he doesn't really check emails.
She's educated.
Well, he pretends to be uneducated when it comes to that.
That's a story.
But you can look at YouTube.
That's another story.
Yeah. But anyway, and then I can also, talk to people about getting together with him for whatever you want, and whatever activity or event you're interested in.
As long as it's after midnight.
Deal.
That's
I know. Oh, you got up early for us. Okay.
No, anyway. Yeah, so that's probably, he goes up to the Northwest Coast quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Is your storytelling, is this centered in the Bay Area?
No, it's completely international and it's
Oh,
all online.
okay,
And
so it's all over.
Oh, wow.
yeah. Yeah. So you're talking to, I think we probably got, if we heard from everywhere where everyone is, usually we have people about 4 continents.
Oh,
Oh my God.
because he actually went to Europe last year and did storytelling and events over there. But we'd go up to the Northwest Coast a lot because
Yes.
that's where Johnny's from. We actually live in California in the Redwoods here in Boulder Creek. So
Oh,
we're pretty close here in California.
I'm just gonna make another, I put a link, everyone, and I just can't make enough of a stand for how meaningful it is. You find your storytellers and like support them. Go in, like go buy a CD, go introduce Johnny to your community. Look, he's on Zoom. He'll zoom in for you, but you know how beautiful it is to come in person. And so
Yeah.
if you're hosting events, or people who are hosting events, he is such a gift. Look, we've got people from Ireland, Australia coming in. And so I just, it's like my vision, what keeps my heart beating extra strong these days is being able to weave the web, and to introduce amazing people. And so I also want to honor the good, oh gosh, Asher Lyons for introducing us. And I'm so grateful for Asher. Thank you. Let's
Oh,
little extra love to him. And he's also going to be a guest teacher in the Alchemy of Story. And so, everything that we can do to keep this sacred art alive, it's like you are feeding the future generations. We know how fast the world is shifting and changing. And we know that when all is lost, and there's big stories that all is going to be lost, that what we always will have is our heart and our tongue and our consciousness will always have this to give. No matter what is happening in the world, we carry our stories with us. And you guys, we've been given this beautiful story of sharing love and kindness you've given us shade today
oh, that's neat.
and given us a story in a way that we can provide shade for others. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is thank you in our tradition.
Aichka,
Aichka.
our sign language for thank you. It's actually the trees thanking you.
Thank you. Thank you. So that is for our podcast today. And for those of you who want to stay on a little bit longer, if you're curious about the alchemy of story, it would be my honor and delight to share it with you. Johnny will be coming and joining us as a guest teacher in this course. And we have our very first module starting on June 6th called Story as Ceremony. You will not think of story the same after going through this course. It speaks a lot about the mysteries of story. And I'll stay along for a couple more minutes if anyone has questions. And otherwise, I want to invite you all to take yourself off mute and to wish Johnny and Kathy off with a great send-off with a hoot and a holler and blessings and all the things. Please take yourselves off mute and go for it.
Yoo-hoo!
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Much love. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Chika.
How wonderful. Beautiful people.
Okay. See you soon.
Bye. See you soon.